So this talk about changing Inauguration Day, when my reading of the Constitution, my discussion with constitutional scholars, no, it's January 20th. But if with this meeting occurring on January 6th, senators and congressmen can say, hey, look, you know what? This is a goat rodeo. These things were, these 7 states, what happened here? And if any other state wants to jump in and say, hey, well, go right ahead. Take it back to your state legislature and get this thing settled. And then get it back to us because, we got to get this thing done before January 20th. Because the Constitution was truly violated, state and federal, with these changing of how votes were cast and how votes were counted. Zero doubt. Now, you would think that Biden and all the other people that were involved in this election would say, yeah, we want transparency. We want accountability. I mean, how am I supposed to govern as a president if more than half the country thinks that I'm illegitimate? I welcome that. Well, where has he been on that? He hasn't. He keeps kind of waddling out and mumbling about who he's appointed. Can't even say their names, and then he waddles back. And no, he's been AWOL on this, and he's AWOL because, well, he knows that this has been a fraud. He was integrally involved in it, as was Harris. Interesting that as of this date, she's yet to resign her Senate seat. Now, maybe that'll change, but it's kind of odd. I mean, we're 2 months into this already from when the, quote, election deception happened. So I would put on the table how the Constitution was truly violated. You don't need the Supreme Court to tell you that. Just read it and look what happened. But if I was going to present one witness, here's the witness I would present. The top cyber warfare person in the world. A fellow by the name of Dr. Navid Kasvaraznaya. If you don't believe me about Naya being the top cyber warfare expert in the world, then how about General Flynn, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency? Look at the interview and listen to the interview I did with General Flynn. It's pinned at the top of our YouTube channel. Listen to that interview. And I present about Dr. Naya to General Flynn. And he confirms. He's the top, not only top cyber warfare person in our country, but in the world. And I read to him his conclusions. Do you have a problem with any of these conclusions, General Flynn, with your knowledge base? As former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency? And his answer was, I have no problem with any of these. On target. So I would bring Naya in. Now, let me present an article to you that was written by Andrea Widberg from the American Thinker. Here's what she says. In her Georgia complaint, and might I add Michigan complaint, Sidney Powell included the declaration of Dr. Navid Kasvaraznaya, an expert witness who stated under oath, penalty of perjury, going to prison, that there was massive computer fraud in the 2020 election, all of it intended to secure a victory for Joe Biden. Dr. Kasvaraznaya's name may not mean a lot to you, but it's one of the weightiest names in the world when it comes to sniffing out cybersecurity problems. His qualifications include a Bachelor of Arts degree, Master of Arts degree, and a PhD in various areas of electrical and computer engineering. In addition, he has stated, quote, I have advanced training from the Defense Intelligence Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, Department of Homeland Security, Office of Intelligence and Analysis, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Professionally, Dr. Kasvaraznaya has spent his career as a cybersecurity engineer. So what does the brilliant Dr. Kasvaraznaya have to say? Again, these were his conclusions signed under penalty of perjury, signed under oath. Here's what he said. The voting machine companies, Dominion, ES&S, Sitel, and Smartmatic, are all vulnerable to fraud and vote manipulation. Dominion has been used in other countries to, quote, forge election results. Dominion's corporate structure is deliberately confusing to hide relationships with Venezuela, China, and Cuba. The hammer and scorecard that we have outlined on this platform many times before, starting on March 19, 2017, with General McInerney and Reliance presenting that information, which was confirmed by great investigative journalists Mary Fanning and Alan Jones. Actually, they had written an article several days before that, them coming on Operation Freedom, and confirmed through their military's intelligence sources. Here's what he says. Hammer and scorecard are real. They're not a hoax, as the Democrats allege. And both are used to manipulate election outcomes. Dominion machines are easily hackable with these programs. Dominion memory cards with cryptographic key access to systems were stolen in 2019. He goes on with further conclusions. The counts in disputed states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, all show electronic manipulation. The simultaneous decisions in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan, might I add, to pretend to halt counting votes was unprecedented and, by the way, unconstitutional, and demonstrated a coordinated effort to collude toward desired results. He goes on. 1 or 2% of votes were created, in favor of Biden. Optical scanners were set to accept unverified, unvalidated ballots. The scanners failed to keep records for audits, an outcome that must have been deliberately programmed into those systems. The stolen cryptographic key, which applied to all voting systems, was used to alter vote counts. He goes on. The favorable votes pouring in after hours for Biden could not be accounted for by Democrat preference for mailed-in ballots. They demonstrated manipulation. For example, in Pennsylvania, it was physically impossible to feed 400,000 ballots into the machines within 2 to 3 hours. Dominion used Chinese parts, and there's reason to believe that China, Venezuela, and Cuba interfered in the election. He goes on. There was a hammer and scorecard cyber attack that altered votes in the battleground states and then forwarded the results to Citel servers in Frankfurt, Germany to avoid detection. He also stated the systems failed to produce any audible results. He concludes. Based on the above findings, Dr. Kasvaraznaya concluded with, quote, high confidence that the election 2020 data were altered in all battleground states, resulting in hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast for President Trump to be transferred to Vice President Biden, end quote. And there you have it. And there you have it. And when I presented all of those conclusions to General Flynn, the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, with the highest levels of clearance, he stated he had no problems with any and all of those conclusions brought forward by Dr. Kasvaraznaya. So if I was going to bring one person forward, that would be the person. Is there anything else I would bring forward, in addition to the unconstitutionality, both on a federal and state level, of how the voting occurred on November 3rd? How not the laws were changed, how the procedures, how the machines, how the process was changed. I would bring Naya. And then I would bring this letter from Archbishop Vigano. Now, he was the former ambassador from the Vatican to the United States from, I believe, 2011 to 2016. So while Obama was president. We have the people's general. I've termed him as General Flynn. The people's general. Well, Archbishop Vigano is the spiritual general. And he has spoken about the Great Reset trying to be perpetrated by the deep state versus the Great Awakening of the freedom movement. I want to read a letter to you. He wrote 2 letters, one in June of 2020 and the other in October 25th of 2020. He wrote those 2 letters to President Trump. I want to read you a portion of this letter because the bought-off lamestream fake media will go near none of this. This is the portions of the letter that he wrote to President Trump. And if you go to your favorite search engine, DuckDuckGo, whatever it might be, and type in letter from Archbishop Vigano to President Trump, October 2020, you can read all of it. But I want to point out some highlights. As I said when I wrote my letter to you in June of 2020, this historical moment sees the forces of evil aligned in a battle without quarter against the forces of good. Forces of evil that appear powerful and organized as they oppose the children of light, who are disoriented and disorganized, abandoned by their temporal and spiritual leaders. A global plan called the Global Reset is underway. Its architect is a global elite that wants to subdue all of humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations. Can you say COVID? In several nations, this plan has already been approved and financed. In others, it is still in the early stage. Behind the world leaders who are the accomplices and executors of this infernal project, there are unscrupulous characters who finance the World Economic Forum, Criminal International Banking Syndicate that I outlined earlier, and Event 201, promoting their agenda. The purpose of the Great Reset is the imposition of a health dictatorship aiming at the imposition of libercidal measures hidden behind tempting promises of ensuring a universal income and canceling individual debt. The price of these concessions from the International Monetary Fund will be renunciation of private property and adherence to a program of the shot against COVID-19 and COVID-21 promoted by Bill Gates with the collaboration of the main pharmaceutical groups. Beyond this enormous economic interests that motivate the promoters of the Great Reset, the imposition of the shot will be accompanied by the requirement of a health passport and a digital ID with a consequent contact tracing of the population of the entire world. Those who do not accept these measures will be confined to detention camps or placed under house arrest, and all their assets will be confiscated. He goes on, around you are gathered with faith and courage those who consider you the final garrison, Mr. President, against the world dictatorship. The alternative is to vote for a person who's manipulated by the deep state, gravely compromised by scandals and corruptions, who will do to the United States what Jorge Mario Bergoglio is doing to the church. Prime Minister Conte to Italy, President Macron to France, Prime Minister Sanchez to Spain, and so on. The blackmailable nature of Joe Biden, just like that of prelates of the Vatican's magic circle, will expose him to be used unscrupulously, allowing illegitimate powers to interfere in both domestic politics as well as international balances. It is obvious that those who manipulate him already have someone worse than him ready, with whom they will replace him as soon as the opportunity arises. And yet, in the midst of this bleak picture, this apparently unstoppable advance of the invisible enemy, an element of hope emerges. The adversary does not know how to love, and it does not understand that it is not enough to assure a universal income or to cancel mortgages in order to subjugate the masses and convince them to be branded like cattle. This people, which for too long has endured the abuses of a hateful and tyrannical power, is rediscovering that it has a soul, the Great Awakening. It is understanding that it is not willing to exchange its freedom for the homogenization and cancellation of its identity. It is beginning to understand the value of familial and social ties, of the bonds of faith, and the culture that unite honest people. This great reset is destined to fail because those who planned it do not understand that there are still people ready to take to the streets to defend their rights, to protect their loved ones, to give a future to their children and grandchildren. The leveling inhumanity of the globalist project will shatter miserably in the face of the firm and courageous opposition of the children of light. The enemy has Satan on its side, he who only knows how to hate. But on our side, we have the Lord Almighty, the God of armies, arrayed for battle, and the most holy Virgin, who will crush the head of the ancient serpent. Quote, if God is for us, who can be against us? Mr. President, you are well aware that in this crucial hour, the United States of America is considered the defending wall against which the war declared by the advocates of globalism have been unleashed. With this heavenly hope and the assurance of my prayer for you, for the First Lady and for your collaborators, with all my heart, I send you my blessing. God bless the United States of America. Carlo Maria Vigano. Folks, Mike Pence's job should be very easy, and should every senator and congressman. All they have to do is listen to Archbishop Vigano. All they have to do is listen to Dr. Kasvaraznaya. And all they have to do is read the Constitution and know that what was perpetrated in a number of states was unconstitutional, illegal from a voting procedure standpoint and voting protocol standpoint. And based on that alone, either the choices are simple. Throw out all the electors from those states that violated the Constitution. One. And then do what the Constitution says to do. It's a contested election. And in a contested election, every state gets a vote based on the majorities in that state. And in the House, which is then responsible for electing the president, the vote would be 27 votes for President Trump, 20 for Biden, with 3 split down the middle. And in the Senate, the vote would be the majority for Vice President Pence. The other option? Send all those states that violated the Constitution back to their state legislatures and present the electors based on the rule of law. Those are the options. It's that simple. Many people will want to make this confusing. Many people will want to say it's a fait accompli. There's nothing else that can be done. Oh, no, there is. And it's not just the next 4 years that rests on this. It's hundreds of years. We either become awakened and see our freedoms enhanced, or we become what that basement Joe Biden has spoken about. The dark winter. The dark winter that lasts hundreds and hundreds of years. And the end of a constitutional republic. What can you do? Believe me, the only reason why this has continued is because you and millions of other people have spoken out. You've called your congressmen, your senators, you've called the White House, you've called your state legislatures, your governors, your secretaries of state's office. and raised hell with them. And you've told them that you're aware of the fraud that they've perpetrated, of how they've broken the law, of how they've destroyed our country and in the process of destroying our country. And you're wise to it, and you're not going to have any part of it. Don't stop now. Keep calling. Keep networking. Keep passing on this information to anyone and everyone you know. This is not conspiracy theory. This is about the future of not just your life, but your entire family. Your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, your grandkids to come. And are they going to have a society based on freedom? Or are they going to have a society based on totalitarianism and slavery? Go back to that speech by General George Washington. He says it all. It was true then, and it's true today. Go back to his words. The time is now near at hand which must probably determine whether Americans are to be freemen or slaves, whether they are to have any property they can call their own, whether their houses and farms are to be pillaged and destroyed and themselves consigned to a state of wretchedness from which no human efforts will deliver them. The fate of unborn millions will now depend under God on the courage and conduct of this army. You're the army. Our cruel and unrelenting enemy, the deep state, leaves us only the choice of brave resistance or the most abject submission. We have, therefore, to resolve to conquer or die. End quote. General George Washington. It is time. It is time that we gain our freedoms back. Nobody's on the couch. Everybody's up and at 'em. Networking information to your friends, families, neighbors, coworkers. Getting on those phones. It matters. Don't let people tell you otherwise. They tell you, oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, it does. It does. And you're already seeing the ramifications of it so far. And all those patriots, I think right now it's been said 50,000 people that have sworn affidavits under oath, under penalty of perjury, that have signed their names under what they witnessed and the fraud that occurred on November 3rd. It's time to stand up. And in so doing, we will defeat the snakes, both domestic and foreign. I hope you'll join us at davejanda.com. Become a member of our subscription platform. Extra shows, extra content, extra analysis, extra guests. Biggest bang for the buck in all the internet. I hope you'll join us for the radio show. It's free, it's live, but if you want the podcast, it's part of the subscription service if you miss the live broadcast. Again, I thank you for your support. Dream big and dare to fail. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Thanks for your time today.